What's going on, guys? Jabron here from Photographers on YouTube with the review of the new Nikon D7100. I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing for all the other reviews. We're going to look at some of the behind the scenes stuff, and I'll show you some general pictures that I've taken with the camera. I've had it for about 2 months now, so I have a pretty decent idea how the camera handles in different kinds of situations, whether you're shooting in the sun and to get your nice solid dynamic range, which is phenomenal on this camera, or in low light situation, how the focusing speed is, or what the noise quality is, and all that. So first we'll look at general pictures, then I'll show you the camera body. We'll compare the size in them. We'll look at dynamic range and close-up of high ISO shots. Now, before I go further into the review, I just want to give a quick shout out to our partner APS Rental. If you have any need to rent the photography equipment, please check them out. They have great rates, better shipping charges, and they also give you free rental insurance. So the link is in the description. If you do need to rent photography equipment, please check them out. All right, so as far as the handling goes, 39 focusing points, so it's a DX, it's a crop sensor, so 39 focusing points, it's plenty. They're spread all over basically, and the speed is pretty solid, much faster than D600. I couldn't really tell. I never had any issues with my D7000 for focusing. I would say this is tad faster, but there's a very clear difference between the focusing speed of D7100 and D600 because the way the focusing points are spread, it's pretty solid, and I think it is a better focusing system as well than D600. 24 megapixels, it's going to give you a great amount of detail. Right now it seems like 24 megapixels is pretty much just standard with Nikon. D3200 had it, D600, D4, D7100 now. So 24 megapixel, good amount of detail for your landscape shots or for your macro photography. The price is $1,200, which is a great thing because when D7000 first came out, this was going for $1,200. So it was good to see that Nikon did not increase the price on the newer model, and you're getting a good deal more than what you got actually with D7000. I'm still not going to recommend this to a beginner, someone who's never owned a DSLR camera. You should not be purchasing this camera. So I just want to make that clear right off the bat. This is a great deal right now for, I think, $900, something like. Yeah, I think it's like $300 off. So before you make the purchase, get in touch with me on Facebook, and I'll fill you in, do a quick comparison for you. I do plan to basically compare both cameras side by side as far as the ISO quality goes and dynamic range and all that. So stay tuned for that review. As soon as I'm done with my finals, I'll do that for you. So handling is it's pretty solid. Body size, very similar to your D7000, slightly bigger than your D7000 and slightly smaller than D600. And if you look at the buttons, very similar. D7100 has that extra I button, info button on the back. The layout on the right side is slightly different, but it's pretty much the same thing. And you have, if you look at the top area, pretty much the same. You have the U1, U2, which is your custom user 1, custom user 2 settings. All three cameras have it. So as far as buttons go, they're very similar. All right. One thing I want to talk about is your 1.3 crop factor that D7100 has. And what this does is that this is a crop sensor, so its regular mode is called DX mode. But if you are looking for extra magnification, for example, if you're photographing wildlife, could be, I don't know, birds or anything where you need a lot of magnification and you have already maxed out your zoom, you can set the camera to 1.3 crop, and it will give you extra magnification. Remember, it's magnifying the image. It's not giving you it's not affecting your depth of field. You're not going to get blurrier background. The blurriness in the background is going to be the same. It's just going to magnify that that image. So that's a great feature. Now the picture that I showed you, that's just, you know, a reception hall. Obviously, you're not going to use the 1.3 crop mode in that situation. But you know, I couldn't photograph a bird or anything, so I just took a quick shot just to show you what exactly it does. All right, so let's take a closer look at some of the other sample pictures, and we'll take it from there.
I want to start off with the camera's dynamic range. I was very impressed by the amount of data that the camera captured. I've used, both Nikon and Canon crop sensor cameras in the past, and this is the first time a crop sensor camera gave me this kind of dynamic range. Picture on the left is basically your raw unedited stuff, and even just looking at raw image, it captured pretty decent amount of details in your shadows here and in your clouds as well. Now obviously the camera has to capture the data, that information, in order for you to go and pull that in post-processing. You're not going to just shoot in the sun and expect the camera, the raw image, to have every single detail in there as is. So the camera has to be good enough to capture that data, so you can go back and reduce your highlights. Now here, I'll reset this, and you can see you lose some of the information here. So you have to go back when you import your pictures in whatever editing software you're using, to reduce your highlights, reduce some of the whites, and increase your shadows so you get some more detail. But this type of quality, this type of detail, it's the first time I'm seeing in a crop sensor camera. My D3S is very well capable of capturing this type of data, obviously because it's full frame sensor camera, so it captures a lot more information. D800 or D600, all these cameras are very good at capturing great amount of detail. So very, very impressed by the dynamic range. So if you're a landscape photographer, this is going to be a huge plus for you. All right, so now let me show you some ISO, high ISO, well, different ISO sample pictures, and we'll talk about that. So I started off with ISO 800, not 400, because 400 is very clean, so it really doesn't matter. So at ISO 800, let me just zoom in here. This is very clean here. I'm not seeing anything that is jumping up and throwing red flags, nothing like this. So ISO 800 is very clean. D7000 was not could not give me this kind of ISO. I mean, I haven't used D7000 for a long time, but this is definitely a step up. All right, ISO 1600. There is a little bit of noise here. In my opinion, this is still very much acceptable. Now the only problem you're going to have is if you are going to shoot in a church. That's when picture, you'll see some noise when you go beyond ISO 1600. So this is 3200. In my opinion, ISO 3200 indoors, where there is, I don't want to say decent amount of light, but okay amount of light, you're still okay. You can still get away with it. For weddings, I'm not too sure, because there's uncertainty with wedding photography. You don't know. If the client wants a big print out of that, they want a big album or not. But for yourself, if you're shooting for yourself, for your own fun memories, whatever, I think even ISO 3200 is okay. You can get away with it. I mean, you can come down here. This is raw image, by the way. You can come down here and reduce the noise here. But what's gonna happen is that when you reduce the noise, you also lose sharpness, in the eye. So let me reset and show you. Not a big deal for some people. I try not to do this. Obviously, if there's a lot of noise, you have no choice. You know, you're gonna do that. So even up to ISO 3200 with a little bit of post processing, this is perfectly fine to me. But again, indoors you're not going to use ISO 3200. I just used it just to test it. You're using the speed light indoors anyway. All right, ISO 4000. All right, that is a lot of noise. So I would not shoot at ISO 4000. I mean, this is falling apart. Uh, you lose a lot of sharpness as well, obviously, when you go high ISO. 6400 ISO is definitely out of question. I mean, I just took it just to show you guys the difference. So ISO had this limitation. It's not the greatest camera ISO wise, but keep in mind it's not a full frame sensor camera, it's a crop sensor, so it is going to have its limitation, but it is definitely better than your D7000. Some other pictures, hold on. All right, real life, realistically, if you're just shooting out uh, street photography or just in an area where there's not a lot of light and you're not using a speed light, this is how ISO 1000 looks like. This is very clean in my opinion, even after your 1:1 crop ratio. This I could not get this for D7000. D7000 will show a lot more noise at ISO 1000. So in my opinion, up to ISO 1600, you're safe. ISO 3200 is where the picture really falls apart. This is taken in a church, and this is taken at f2.8, 1/25th of a second. 1/25th of a second. Now the lens had a VR, obviously. Otherwise, everything would have been completely blurry. I wouldn't be able to handhold the shot at this slow shutter speed. So let me take a look at the noise. That is a lot of noise, guys. So the point I'm trying to make is, don't buy this camera because you think you can shoot, weddings with this. You sure can, just not in churches. In some churches you can, where the walls are all white, a lot of windows where there's a lot of natural light coming in. Yeah, maybe you can crank it up to ISO 2000 and shoot a christening there, or even a wedding. I mean, obviously it depends on what kind of you know uh, occasion that is. But to use this camera as a primary camera to shoot weddings, I would not recommend it. If someone obviously contacts you for a gig like this, you don't want to pass on a gig just because you don't have the right camera. Just rent the proper equipment and do the job. Okay, so ISO 4000, ISO 3200, taken at 2.8, 1/80th of a second. Nice, clean shot, and it's sharp because uh, this camera does not have anti-aliasing filter, which makes your picture slightly sharper. The only drawback is, which I don't think is such a big deal, is if you have repeated pattern, really close-knit patterns like uh, diagonal twill pattern on your shirt or on your jacket, or herringbone pattern on your jacket, you may get a little bit of moire effect. So I don't think it's such a big deal. I personally would prefer now, after using D7100 cameras without the anti-aliasing filter. Alright, so I really like this. Look at the sharpness. It's very clean. ISO 4000 3.2. Now everyone knows when you go high ISO, it reduces the sharpness. So even at such high ISO, the picture is very clean, and this is all handheld stuff. Okay, with a tripod, obviously it would have been much sharper. Point is, the camera takes very sharp pictures. Sure, this is taken at 24mm, which obviously gives you greater depth of field, but I have noticed a very obvious difference between this and D7000, for example, as far as sharpness goes. Here's your 1:1 crop ratio. It's very clean. I mean, handheld shot at 3.2. Sure, it has something to do with the lens as well, but the camera it's quite sharp. Now let me quickly show you the before and after. Color wise, it's pretty neat. Obviously, you're not gonna uh, post pictures without editing it. All I did is just increase the temperature here to make it a little bit more warmer, and just really basic editing, reduce the highlights to bring more details in the glass. So that's it for your basic ISO test. Here's another one, ISO 3200. A lot of noise, obviously, because I was in a church. So I think 1600 is very much doable with this. With ISO 3200, you're gonna have to do a little bit of I mean, if there is a lot of noise and your client, for a fact the client's gonna get the pictures printed on an album or a large print, you may have to go in post processing and reduce some of the noise there. Okay. Real quick, guys, if you don't mind, give it a quick thumbs up on the video. I would really appreciate it, and if you could share it with on your Facebook page, or you could tweet it. Also, if you are new to my channel, I have a budget photography equipment website. Do check it out. There's a lot of third-party equipment I listed there that are great quality. A lot of this stuff I've actually used myself, and I would highly recommend it. And if you do plan to purchase any equipment, just check out my website, and if you just click on the link to purchase it, it would support our channel, and I would really appreciate that.
Alright, so in conclusion, is this the right camera for you? Look, if you're a beginner, if you've never owned a DSLR camera, this is overkill for you, because by the time you learn about photography and all that, there's going to be a newer model out. So I would recommend not to purchase this if you are a beginner. Now, if you've owned a beginner camera, for example, D3100 or D3200, and you're looking to upgrade, keep in mind you need to understand the basics of photography first. You need to understand composition, exposure, basic of lighting. You don't have to be a master at it, but you have to understand some of the basic stuff. Yeah, in that case, you could definitely go for it. Price-wise, I think it's great, because $1,200, you're getting a lot for your buck. When I can't remember exactly how much D90 was going for when it first came out, but it was around the same price, I believe. This is a big step up from D90. Okay, the only thing I'm not a fan of, and I'm not complaining about it, is it's a crop sensor. So if you have to do a wide angle shot, then you have to change the lens. Now, if you're using kit lens, yeah, you're okay. But for someone who's shooting weddings, you're not going to shoot weddings with a kit lens. You're probably going to get 24-70. So 24 is not quite wide enough on this sensor. That's the only thing that bothers me. Otherwise, this camera is solid. Now, is it a pro camera? Look, same thing. It depends on where you're using it. No, by definition, this is not a professional camera. It's not. But if you're going to shoot smaller events, non-church events, this camera can pretty much handle. I mean, especially for outdoor stuff, or even if you're shooting in a reception hall, the ceilings are even 15 feet, you should not have any problem. Even 30 feet with your, nice speed light, you should be able to, to be able to shoot comfortably with no problem. So, would I recommend this? Yes. Is it a great upgrade from D7000? No. No. Wait for that video, because you're not going to see such a huge difference. If you currently have D7000 and you're looking to upgrade, this is not going to be like, oh my god, this is so much different than D7000. Sure, dynamic range is better, ISO is better, but you really want to, when you take a step up, you don't want to take a mini step up. It's good to take baby steps, but when when you're already using D7000 and you have a very good idea of, the general idea of photography, then you want to take a step up where you see a good difference, So I would recommend maybe go full frame, and we'll talk about that later, hit me up on Facebook, and we'll talk, what's the right equipment for you. I personally don't think going up it's such a huge upgrade from D7000, because D7000 still has pretty great amount of features. Still has its dedicated dial and all that stuff. So, but if you are contemplating between D7000 and D7100, again, let me make the video. I'll show you guys the sample pictures, and then you could decide which route to take. Now, if you're a beginner, definitely a no. Yes, now you can make a case. Initially when I reviewed this camera, I said no, it's not a beginner. Why? Because it was $1,200. It's not $1,200 anymore. So now you can make a good case for D7000. A lot of people say, should I buy D5200 or D7000? And I say, add another $100 and you can get D7000. It has its own dedicated aperture dial. Yes, this is the way to go then. So wait for that comparison. But those of you who are ready to upgrade from your D3200 or your D5100, this is, and if you have the money, if you could spend $1,200 on a camera body with no problem, then absolutely this would be a great upgrade. Now from D7000, not so much. Still an upgrade. I'm not sure if you want to sell this camera, take a loss on it, and then invest more into it. Maybe just wait a little bit and see what D400 comes out with, what kind of ISO quality and dynamic range that has. All right, so hope all is well, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye bye.